Do you ever wonder if you've been marked? You survived the spectral sales event. You've seen the haunting results of life consumed by cheap thrills and impulse buys, courtesy of Wally Wimp and the Emporium. Now we move beyond the satire. Tonight we open the door to the true source of that mundane dread. This is the launchpad for a brand new series, Steel Shadows, Visions of Richard Matheson. Across 10 episodes, we will analyze how Matheson's iconic tales, from robot boxers and steel to the road rage paranoia of Duel, directly mirrored the shadows in his own life. We'll explore the real life trauma of a World War II veteran, the painful losses that informed his domestic horror, and the Hollywood frustrations that fueled his sharpest satire. The fear we confront tonight is more fundamental. It's the realization that you are merely expected to conform, expected to vanish into the relentless pattern of the ordinary. Prepare to venture into the mind of a master, prepare to see the world as Matheson did, where the uncanny twist is never far from the mundane truth. The curtain is up. The shadows are gathering. SL Tonight, Anthology, begins. Good evening, seekers of matrimonial mayhem, and welcome to SL Tonight, where we tie the knot of terror with Richard Matheson, the pioneer who penned 14 novels and 16 Twilight Zone episodes. I'm Felix Lebeski, your host for Steel Shadows, Visions of Richard Matheson, a bonus episode celebrating the man whose stories lampoon his career. Pulp humor skewering human fears, family bonds turning to farce. In the 1950s, Matheson was in California scripting for Alfred Hitchcock Presents, inspired by his own wedding jitters and vaudeville sketches that made him question fate's pranks. The Wedding grew from that whimsy, a tale of a groom's superstitions ruining his day, reflecting his aim to blend comedy with supernatural chaos. Published in 1958 in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, it captures his skill at turning nuptials into nightmare, drawing from marital myths and his father's immigrant tales of luck gone sour. Behind the scenes, Matheson collaborated with Twilight Zone producers, but this story stayed in pulps, reflecting his frustration with Hollywood's limits on lighthearted horror. It's a window into what drew him to satire, the fear that superstitions control our happiest moments, a theme that deepened with his son's illness in 1969. Let's exchange vows with this cursed ceremony. Then he told her that they couldn't be married on Thursday because that was the day the devil married his own mother. They were at a cocktail party and she wasn't sure what he had said because the room was noisy and she was a little high. What, darling? She asked, leaning over to hear. He told her again in a serious, straightforward manner. She straightened up and smiled. Honest your card, she said, and took a healthy sip from her Manhattan. Later, when he was driving her home, she started talking about the day they were going to get married. He'd say they'd have to change it. Any day was all right except Thursday. I don't get you, darling. She put her head on his unbroad and sloping shoulder. Any day is all right except Thursday, he repeated. She looked up, half the amusement dying hard. All right, hon, she said. A joke's a joke. Who's joking? He inquired. She stared at him. Darling, are you crazy? He said, No. But you mean you want to change the date because... She looked flabbergasted. Then she burst into a giggle and punched him on the arm. You're a card, Frank. You had me going for a minute. The small mouth pushed together into an irked bow. Dearest, I will not marry you on Thursday. Her mouth fell open. She blinked. My God, you're serious. Perfectly, he answered. Yes, but, she began. She chewed her lower lip. You're crazy, she said, because, look, is it so important, he asked. Why can't it be another day? But you didn't say anything when we made the date, she argued. I didn't realize it was to be a Thursday. She tried hard to understand. She thought he must have a secret reason. BO, bad breath, something important. But we made the date already, she offered weakly. I'm sorry, he was adamant. Thursday is out. She looked at him carefully. Let's get this straight, Frank. You won't marry me on that Thursday. Not on any Thursday. Well, I'm trying to understand, darling, but I'll be damned if I can. He didn't say anything. Her voice rose. You're being childish. No, I'm not. She slid away from him on the seat and glared out the window. I'd like to know what you call it, then. She lowered the pitch of her voice to imitate his. I won't marry on Thursday because the devil married his grandmother or something. His mother, he corrected. She snapped an irritated glance at him and clenched her fists. Make it another day and we'll forget the whole thing, he suggested. Oh, sure, sure. Forget the whole thing. Forget that my fiancé is afraid he'll make the devil mad if he marries me on Thursday. That's easy to forget. It's nothing to get excited about, dearest. She groaned. Oh, if you weren't the absolute limit. She turned and looked at him. Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. How about Wednesday? She asked. He was silent, then he cleared his throat with embarrassment. He started and then smiled awkwardly. I forgot that, dear, he said. Not Wednesday either. She felt dizzy. Why? If we married on Wednesday, I'd be a cuckold. She leaned forward to stare at him. You'd be a what? She asked in a shrill voice. A cuckold. You'd be unfaithful. Her face contorted in shock. Oh, God, take me home. I wouldn't marry you if you're the last man on earth. He kept driving carefully. She couldn't stand the silence. She glared at him accusingly. And I suppose if we got married on a Sunday, you'd turn into a pumpkin. Sunday'd be fine, he said. Oh, I'm so glad for you, she snapped. You don't know how happy you've made me. She turned away from him. Maybe you just don't want to marry me, she said. Well, if you don't, say so. Don't give me all this crap about, I want to marry you. You know that, but it has to be the right way, for both our sakes. She hadn't intended to invite him in, but she was so used to his coming in that she forgot when they arrived at the house. You want a drink? She asked sullenly as they went into the living room. No, thank you. I'd like to talk this thing over with you, sweetheart, he said, pointing to the couch. He set down her chubby body stiffly. He took her hand. Dearest, please try to understand. He slid his arm around her and stroked her shoulder. In another moment, she melted. She looked into his face earnestly. Darling, I want to understand, but how can I? He patted her shoulder. Now listen, I just know certain things, and I believe that to marry you on the wrong day would be fatal to our relationship. But why? He swallowed. Because of consequences. She didn't say anything. She slid her arms around him and pressed close. He was too comfortable not to marry just because he wouldn't marry on Thursday or Wednesday. She sighed. All right, darling, we'll change it to Sunday. Will that make you happy? Yes, he said. That'll make me happy. Then one night he offered her father $15 to seal the bargain of their marriage. Mr. O'Shea looked up from his pipe with an inquiring smile. Would you say that again? He asked politely. Frank held out the money. I wish to pay this as purchase money for your daughter. Purchase money? Mr. O'Shea. Yes, purchase. Who's selling her? Mr. O'Shea inquired. I'm giving her hand in marriage. I know that. This is just symbolic. Put it in your hope chest, said Mr. O'Shea, and went back to his paper. I'm sorry, sir, but you must accept it, Frank insisted. Then she came downstairs. Mr. O'Shea looked at his daughter. Tell your young man to stop kidding, he said. She looked at Frank with a worried glance. Oh, you're not starting in again, Frank. Frank explained it to both of them. He made it clear that he in no way regarded her as a mere cash purchase, that it was only the principle of the thing he wished to adhere to for both their sakes. All you have to do is take the money, he finished, and everything will be all right. She looked at her father. Her father looked at her. Take it, father, she sighed. Mr. O'Shea shrugged and took the money. 492, sang Frank. 357816. 1515 thrice on my breast I spit to guard me safe from fascinating charms. Frank, you got your shirt all wet. Then he told her that instead of throwing out her bouquet, she'd have to let all the men make a rush for her garter. She squinted at him. Come on, Frank, this is going too far. He looked pained. I'm only trying to make things right for us, he said. I don't want anything to go wrong. But good God, Frank, haven't you done enough? You got me to change the wedding day. You bought me for $15 and spit it all over yourself in front of Daddy. You make me wear this awful itchy hair bracelet. Well, I stood for all, but I'm getting a little tired of it all. Enough's enough. Frank got sad. He stroked her hand and looked like Joan of Arc going up in flames. I'm only trying to do what I think is best. We are beset by a host of dangers. We must be wary of what we do or all is lost. She stared at him. Frank, you do want to marry me, don't you? This isn't just some scheme to... He shoved her into his arms and kissed her fervently. Fulvia, he said, dearest, I love you, and I want to marry you, but we must do what is right. Later, Mr. O'Shea said, he's a jerk, kick him out on his ear. But she was rather chubby, and she wasn't very pretty, and Frank was the only man who'd ever proposed to her. So she sighed and gave in. She talked it over with her mother and her father. She said that everything would be all right as soon as I got married. She said, I'll humor him until then, and then whammo. But she managed to talk him out of having the male wedding guests make a rush for her garden. You don't want me to get my neck broken, do you? She asked. You're right. Just throw him your stockings. Darling, let me throw my bouquet, please? He looked pensive. All right, but I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. He got some salt, put it in a hot oven in her kitchen. After a while, he looked in. Now our tears are dry and we're all right for a while, he said. The wedding day arrived. Frank was up bright and early. He went to church and made sure all the windows were closed tight to keep the demons out. He told the pastor it was lucky as February so the doors could be kept closed. He made it quite clear that no one was to be allowed to touch the doors during the ceremony. The pastor got mad when fired his .38 up the chimney. What in heaven's names are you doing? He asked. I'm just frightening off evil spirits, said Frank. Young man, there are no evil spirits in the First Calvary Episcopal Church. Frank apologized, but while the pastor was out in the lobby explaining the shot to the local policeman, Frank took some dishes out of his overcoat pocket, broke them, and put the pieces under pew seats and in corners. Then he rushed downtown and bought 25 pounds of rice in case anyone ran out of it or forgot to bring it. Hurrying back to his betrothed's house, he rang the bell. Mrs. O'Shea answered. Frank asked, Where's your daughter? You can't see her now, Miss O'Shea said. I simply must, Frank demanded. He rushed past Mrs. O'Shea and dashed up the stairs. He found his bride sitting on the bed in her petticoat, polishing the shoes she was going to wear. She jumped up. What's the matter with you? She cried. Give me one of your shoes, he gasped. I almost forgot. It would have been doomed if I had forgotten. He reached for his shoe. She drew back. Get out of here, she cried, pulling on her bathrobe. Give me a shoe. No, what am I supposed to wear? Galoshes? All right, he said, plunging into her closet and came out with an old shoe. I'll take this, he said, and ran from the room. She remembered something and her wail following him out. You weren't supposed to see me before we get married. That's just a silly superstition, he called back as he jumped down the staircase. In the kitchen, he handed the shoe to Mr. O'Shea, who was sipping coffee and smoking his pipe. Give it to me, said Frank. Mr. O'Shea said, I'd like to. Frank was oblivious. Hand the shoe to me and say I transfer authority, he said. Mr. O'Shea's mouth fell open. He took the shoe and handed it back dumbly. I transfer authority, he said. Then he blinked. Hey, wait! But Frank was gone. He jumped back upstairs. No! She yelled as he ran into her room again. Get the hell out of here! He hit her on the head with the shoe. She howled. He swept her into his arms and kissed her violently. My dearest wife, he said, and ran out. She burst into tears. No, I'm not going to marry him. She threw the polished shoes at the wall. I don't care if he's the last man in the world. He's awful. After a while, she picked up the shoes and polished them again. About then, Frank was downtown, making sure the caterer had used exactly the right ingredients in the cake. Then he bought Fulvia a paper hat to wear when she ran from the church to the sedan. He went to every second-hand store in town and bought all the old shoes he could use to fence against malign spirits. But by the time the wedding hour came, he was exhausted. He sat in the church anteroom panting, running over the list he'd made to make sure nothing had been forgotten. The organ started to play, and she came down the aisle with her father. Frank stood looking at her, still breathing quite heavily. Then his eyebrows flew up as he noticed that a latecomer was just entering the front door. Oh, no, he cried, covering his face with his hands. I'm going to go up in a puff of smoke. But he didn't. When he opened his eyes, his bride was holding his hand tightly. You see, Frank, she comforted, you're full of baloney all the time. The ceremony was performed, and he was so numbed with surprise and shock and bewilderment that he forgot about the shoes and bouquets and hats and rice and everything. As they rode to the hotel in the hired limousine, she stroked his hand. Superstition, she cooed. It's the bunk. But, Frank offered. Shh, she said, pressing shut his protest with a kiss. Aren't you still alive? Yes, and I can't understand it. At the door to their hotel room, Frank looked at her. She looked at him. The old boy looked away. Finally, she said, Carry me across the threshold, darling. He smiled a flimsy smile. I'd feel silly about it, he said. For me, she insisted. I'm entitled to one superstition. He smiled, then, yes, he admitted, and bent to pick her up. They never made it. She was awfully chubby. Heart failure, said the doctor. Satan, breathed Fulvia, remaining in a mottled funk the ensuing 10 years. That was The Wedding, a story that unties Richard Matheson's take on fate's farce. At 32, Matheson was in Los Angeles, balancing family with Twilight Zone scripting, inspired by his marriage to Ruth Ann Woodson that made him ponder Luck's role in love. It lampoons his career, war's randomness clashing with Hollywood pomp. As his pulp roots maturing into critiques of human folly, Writing this in 1958, he drew from vaudeville gags and his brother's childhood pranks, aiming to show how fear derails joy. Behind the scenes, Matheson submitted to F&SF, reflecting his frustration with Hollywood's formulaic romances. It's a window into what drew him to horror, the fear that superstitions mock our control, a theme that deepened with civil rights struggles in the 1960s. Richard Matheson, the visionary behind The Wedding, turned vows into a comedy of errors. The story asks, do superstitions rule us, or do we rule ourselves? Join us next time for Steel Shadows, Visions of Richard Matheson on SL Tonight, as we keep unearthing his enigmas. Like, subscribe, and good night.